Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
We're joking that, how are we going to open multiple episodes in a row with jokes about the Leafs and the annual tradition of losing in the most painful way possible? We just did this, and I think we did it even before that last episode, and yet we'd be remiss in not opening with more about that now.
Some traditions just need to be paid the attention they deserve.
Yeah, we don't really have a choice in the hockey world. I think we actually predicted it. Someone pointed it out. We have accidentally predicted how the last three games of that series would go. We talked about how it would be a blowout in Game 5. And then one of us in the last couple episodes apparently said they're going to go win Game 6 and then lose 6-1 or something in Game 7. Called it to a T. We're well-versed in this.
We called that correctly, as well as just about every person who's watched north of 3 hockey games in the last 4 years.
The jerseys on the ice during play, I was like, oh my God, man. Sailing in the air, it was the arrows in 300 blotting out the sun.
There was a still image of a Leafs fan in the front row just giving the most aggressive middle finger to someone out of frame as there's a ref bending over to pick up a jersey on the ice in the background. And you could not have summed that game up any better than that moment. You could hear the boos through the still image.
I can't believe they did the salute at the end of the game.
It was insanity. Why? I get why you would want to do that, or maybe, I don't even know if the word should be used here, but it was saluting a disaster. Thanks for coming.
At what point is that just straight up a safety risk for the players?
Dude, they zoomed in on them, and I was flinching. I was expecting a drink projectile across that frame. I'm very impressed. I'm happy a player didn't get clobbered by anything, but I was 100% expecting someone to have tried to beam them with something.
Yeah, at least there's no smoothies going 100 feet in the air on that one.
That's the difference between the Canadian markets. Jets fans, their smoothies go in the air in celebration. Leafs fans, their smoothies go horizontal onto the ice in frustration. And that's why the Jets are able to find solace in their loss, and Toronto's imploding. And we're here to, again, with apologies to our friend Steve Dangle, enjoy it as always. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
I'm Evan.
For everyone asking Brad and Evan to switch sides, they're not doing it out of frustration. They just keep already sitting down before remembering to try switching sides. And if you know anything about these guys, they're not going to get back up after they sit. So
I'm working on my groove. I can't. It's a work in progress.
It's still early on the new couch. So if we're going to make the switch,
we've gone too far.
I've tried, folks. I've tried. I'll keep trying, but just so you know, it's not on me. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking to you about potential defense targets for the Detroit Red Wings, familiar names that we've been talking about, like Gavrikov, as well as names that are still somewhat familiar, but we haven't talked about in a while, like Bowen Byram and others. We're going to be getting into Red Wings news and more about the team and their structure. We're going to be talking about the NHL news, Stanley Cup playoffs, other updates, and then more before we jump into our 2025 NHL Draft Prospect Profile, all of that and lots more before we get into overtime. Very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to join the Dub Club and support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes. We record them right after these main ones. We tell stories, you get bloopers, you get thoughts with Evan, we let loose, we have fun. It usually goes off the rails in about 30 minutes in. We're like, why are people still listening to this? But it's a good time. You also get access to the Winged Wheel Podcast Patreon exclusive Discord. In addition to that, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, going directly to our Patreon supporters in season. And for the off season, we have lots more planned. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. Vladislav Gavrikov. Who is he as a defenseman, and why do we keep talking about him? Unrestricted free agent. LA is hoping, now Ken Holland is hoping to have him re-sign there. A key figure in their defensive core, someone that Todd McClellan will obviously be familiar with. Why would he be such a good addition for the Red Wings? Because we've been talking about him like it'd be a foregone conclusion that he'd be a good addition for the Red Wings.
There's this narrative that flies around with dozens of defensemen in the NHL where they're a defensive defenseman. They don't bring anything offensively, so they're very good defensively. The thing is, with 75% of them, they're actually bad defensively and offensively, but because there's no offense, they get labeled a defensive defenseman, and then they show up and you're horribly disappointed. That narrative flies around Gavrikov. The only difference is he's actually good at defense. He's not going to give you any offense, but the defense truly is in the upper tier of the league. Whatever metric you want to look at or raw stats you want to look at, it backs up the eye test that he is just one of the best pure defenders in the league. He shoots left. He fills an obvious hole on the Red Wings blue line. Like, this is, if you could build a player to line up opposite Mo Seider in a lab, it might be Gavrikov, which would free Mo up to do more with the puck, take more risks, which we've seen Mo do, and that's usually when he's at his best. The thing is, one, like you said, LA really wants to keep him, and when defenders are available like that, feel like there's going to be 30 other teams in the league pursuing him as well. He is turning 30 later this year, which is also a big risk. So whatever contract he gets is probably going to take him to his age 37 or close to it. Don't love that, but defenders of his caliber do not come available all that often.
I'm going to start with the 30-year-old thing. And you're right, Brad. Like, you sign him, if you sign him to a 7-year deal because you're not the LA Kings, that means he'll be 36 and a half or so when he's done that contract. Assuming max term on the contract, he's a high priority position walking to unrestricted free agency. He's going to want the max term if his agent's any good. But, like, even though you're thinking the back half, or at best the back couple of years of that contract are going to be bad, what do the Red Wings need right now in their blue line? You said it. They need stability. Mo Seider has done a good job holding down the fort. Simon Edvinsson did great in his effective rookie season, coming in and taking on huge minutes. You hope that Axel Sandin-Pellikka is going to follow suit. Doesn't play the same game, but is going to be a young player who's going to have to take on a large workload with a lot of minutes. Now, with Mo Seider, my biggest thing has been this guy has done so much. Just to zero in on Mo, he's done so much and he's been so effective. And you can see limitations in his development where you're like, if he had a little bit more breathing room, if he could afford to make a mistake, if he could just develop with more favorable deployment, not always playing the toughest minutes, he's still young. He still has a lot of room above him. Someone suggested to me that they don't think that he has a lot more of a development runway. And I disagreed firmly. Like, I really pushed back on that because I'm like, look how any defenseman's progression goes in the NHL, any good defenseman. Just because Mo's done all of this incredibly competent stuff in his first 4 seasons in the NHL doesn't mean that he stole that from his future development. It just means he's one of those unicorns that can do all of that early on in his career. Really mature game. His development path was great, and it benefited the Red Wings massively. But you can see, like, the offensive game, I think, has more room to grow. You can still see some small defensive warts in his game in terms of when the play breaks down or when he gets tired, or even if it's just as simple as having someone eat those minutes so he's not as tired late in the season. There's more to him. And the same applies to Simon Edvinsson, and the same will apply to Johansson and Sandin-Pellikka. And it doesn't just have to come from Mo Seider's line mate or whoever's playing with any of those players. We've talked about it a lot. There's a cascade effect. You have someone slotted properly in the top pair, everyone downstream will benefit. 30 years old is a guy who's mature, who's been there, done that. I've said time and time again, in this league, It takes 200 to 300 reps as an NHL defenseman to really understood how the game is played at the NHL level. And that maturity, that experience, that veteran leadership at the blue line will have massive, massive effects outside of the fact that this guy just plays really, really competent defense. I'm boring. I don't know if you guys know this, but I used to play defense. I value so highly guys who actually defend on the blue line and not like those circus freaks like Erik Karlsson who just dress up as defensemen that you love, Brad. But it's early in the morning, and so that I love Erik Karlsson, but it's just not. There's a difference between that and a guy who can actually defend. And so the Gavrikovs, you're right. A quarter of a point per game or whatever it is, it's not sexy. The fact that he keeps the other team away from high danger chances and keeps his blue line stable, that's sexy. And that's what the Red Wings are missing desperately.
The thing with Detroit specifically and Gavrikov, if they do pursue him, if he does hit the market, they're going to have to pay handsomely.
Don't care.
Which is fine. The bet you're making at that point, though, is a top four of Gavrikov, Seider, Edvinsson, Sandin, Pellikka.
Love it.
Can get you a cup.
Love it.
A lot of to be determines there with Gavrikov's age and ASP's uncertainty. Not that there's any like super big risks there. It's just he hasn't played in the NHL yet. But that's a bet you have to be very comfortable making.
I thought about it. I'm happy.
I think that's a bet I make, given other alternatives. Now, obviously, there's the huge asterisks here. Well, who else are they signing in unrestricted free agency? If you have to choose between Gavrikov and Marner because you can only sign one, sorry, Ryan, you're taking Marner. But if you swing and miss on any of the big forwards, but all of a sudden you can get the defense, yeah, okay, this team's going to have a ton of trouble scoring for the next couple of years still. But if their goals per game goes down by 0.25 to 0.5, that's significant. And that's a bet you almost have to make at that point, and then find the forward solutions in future free agencies or trades. But it's intriguing. And again, you don't know where Gavrikov's head's at. Does he want to stay in LA? Does he want out? If he does want out, is Detroit the preferred landing spot? Is this going to be one of those ones he'll consider Detroit, but they have to massively outbid everybody else, which is going to be, people don't want to hear it, true of just about every other free agent as well. It's an intriguing thought because I think the biggest benefit, and I forgot to mention this, if he hits the market and Detroit is successful in landing him, is this is the stability you're looking for. If it all comes to fruition and Sandin Pellikka is remotely close to what we think he is, you're not touching that top four for 6-7 years. That's it. That's who you got. Sure, some guys might come into the bottom pair and overperform and you shuffle as performance dictates, or you drop one of the big four to the bottom pair to send a message if they're having like an off week or something, whatever. That's always going to happen. But that's the stability a blue line would desperately crave. Now you're just praying the upside is what you think it is.
So what does Gavrikov make now? Like 5.8 or something like that?
5.875 is his last year of his contract.
No need to be specific.
I just happened to be open on the page, honestly. I'm not like Brad where I just remember that off the top of my head.
So
I would actually prefer your Rain Man left hand, right hand shot remembrance, Brad, to be contract details instead. That'd be way more useful for us.
I'm not bad with them.
Although the number of times I felt like I've been like, we need this player because we have a massive hole on the left side, and you're like, that guy definitely shoots right. Like,
yeah, that does actually help.
All right, well, let's just restart then. So what is the Gavrikov contract going to look like with every team lining up to get him, right? Like the Red Wings are looking at Seider's obviously now locked up long term. You're going to have to get Edvinsson on a similar deal, I would think, depending on how his next season goes. And then you've got ASP coming in, and if he turns into a near point per game defenseman or 60-point defenseman, like you're going to have to pay him too. do you want to lock up that much money in your D-core when you could go out and, find someone like, this may not even be a good example, like a Ryan Lindgren, for example. You pay him $5 million. I'll just say Ryan Lindgren, but insert whoever you want in your mind. You pay him $5 million. It's not a huge cap hit. You know what they are. They're not elite at anything, but they're very stable, can easily play in the top 4. And that way you're not putting all this money in your defensive core when you know that you need superstar forwards to really take you to the next level.
It's a good point. And in a flat cap world, I would say it's a great point and one that stumps me, because I'm sitting here saying, pay him. You got to overpay and have that number make 31 other franchises go, Detroit gave him what? Because that's genuinely my opinion.
Well, is that not bad cap management if you're giving a guy who, is a defensive defenseman with 30 points, $8 million? Like, that seems like malpractice to me.
It would, but the cap is going up to well over $100 million. The number is getting to be so big that the league is actively not talking about anything more than a few years out, because it's going to change. It's going to be a massive paradigm shift in terms of what players are offered, and we still haven't wrapped our brains around what that looks like. Like, what's a $5 million contract equivalent to a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? We can calculate the numbers, and I think we did it on a recent episode. I should pull that calculator I made back up. But still, we get naturally squeamish when we see 8 million. That isn't the same as it was 2 years ago, and 3, 4, 5 years from now, it's going to feel like peanuts. So in a world where not only the cap is going up, and so I'm saying these numbers are less of a percentage of the cap hit, especially in future, there's a vacuum right now that's coming in terms of empty cap space. And if you could take advantage and even fill more of it, like a bit more of it than you should, do that now and take advantage of it now to get the really effective player now. And then you just deal with it later, because it's going to be, one, much more minimal than as if we were in a flat cap world. And 2, you get the benefit of having the great player. And we've seen really effective teams with their cap structures, the Vegases, the Floridas.
We know it's not real.
It's not real.
Cap structure is not real. So my argument is therefore invalid.
No, but it's a good point. Like I'm telling you, Evan, it's a good point. But my whole thing with the salary cap is, and I said this when we were discovering how much it was going up, is it is a colossal rise. It isn't just like a few years worth of big increases. We are getting back pay from the COVID flat years, inflation, all of it. Like these numbers are skyrocketing. How big do these numbers have to be for the NHL and the NHLPA to have amicable negotiations for the next CBA? You know how rare that is? Those two never get along. It's like Tom and Jerry. But here we are pretty much banking on the next collective bargaining agreement coming with no issues at all, because everyone's pockets are full and their stomachs are fat. This is a rare opportunity where everything is coming up Millhouse. The money's coming into the league. Detroit should take advantage of the cap vacuum.
So if you have let's just say you have $9 million, it's Gavrikov or insert UFA forward here, other than, we'll get to the Marner thing, but yeah. I don't think $9 million is enough for him, but maybe. Insert your favorite UFA forward here. Who would you take? Because I know I wouldn't be taking a defenseman with $9 million. I wouldn't be taking Gavrikov with $9 million.
I need to run some numbers, and maybe we'll do that for a future episode, but I'm going Gavrikov here.
Okay, so I'll just say this. Sam Bennett or Gavrikov?
Gavrikov. And that's close, because I really think Sam Bennett adds a lot of what this team needs. We saw Florida last night. They play... Is Florida playing Sam Bennett's game? Is Sam Bennett playing Florida's game? It doesn't matter. They're one and the same at this point. Detroit could use that. Detroit is absolutely Swiss cheese on their blue line. Gavrikov.
Brad?
The forward.
What do you think Brad's going to say?
Thank you.
I just look at, I used the term last episode, recreating Mitch Marner in the aggregate. I think it's easier to recreate defensemen in the aggregate, especially a defensive defenseman. Obviously, I'm not saying anybody else there is going to be to the level of Gavrikov's defense, but the Red Wings are in a better position, I'll call it long-term, on defense than they are at forward right now. In the short term, they're pretty screwed on both, but we saw the results from the last year. We all make the memes about how bad the Red Wings defense was, but by most metrics, their defense was better than their offense at 5-on-5.
That's such a low bar, Brad.
I know, but then when you look at what they have in the system, the ages of Edvinsson, Seider, Sandin Pellikka versus Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane, like the issues obvious in my mind that they need more help on forward. So if I could only pick one, it would depend on which forward, obviously, but
Let's use Bennett as a benchmark.
I
That's
probably
not a forward that you're super fond of giving a massive
yeah,
contract to.
and they're around the same age. I have the exact same concerns about them falling off a cliff in 2-3 years with their age, their contract, coming off career years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm still going the forward, still going Bennett. Now, if Marner, Marchand, or Ehlers are an option, that's even more of a no-brainer for me. But I shouldn't say no-brainer because it is close. But yeah, I just think the Red Wings need a lot more help at forward than they need on defense. And again, when you look at the big picture, if you are a ASP believer, 3 of their top 4 is solved long-term. Yes, you got to find that one gap. And Evan's example of Ryan Lindgren did make me flinch, but
Yeah, me too.
but he would be cheaper and at least be an upgrade to whoever the hell they're trotting out in the top 4 now.
That dude's always bleeding.
He's Ben Chiarot. Like we'd replace Ben Chiarot with more expensive Ben Chiarot.
So we're improving the defensive core without overspending.
Because, we did say with how bad this defense is, losing Ben Chiarot last season would have been a net negative to this team.
Oh, it would have been devastating. Losing Olli Maatta proved to be a huge loss.
Okay, and here's the thing. Every single bit of the reasoning you just gave was correct, Brad. And I, if doing my best Evan impression here, gun to the earth, would have to admit that you're right in what you just said, except for it is easier to recreate a defensive defenseman in the aggregate. Fully disagree. Why the hell haven't they done it since?
Because they're bad at picking the guys in the aggregate.
Yeah, because they gave 3 years ago Ben Chiarot almost $5 million in a flat cap.
$5 million, what didn't restrict that? Like I think
to Evan's point though, they're bad at identifying talent.
I also think at the end of this, like, the money spent on Ben Chiarot will be fine.
Yeah, it already is.
Because if he wasn't on the team.
And that's because they're the ones who have been picking, and they're the ones who are going to continue to be picking. So why not just pick the guy who we know for certain is good rather than try to cobble him together from puzzle pieces from different sets, and one of them is actually just a piece of dust and lint off the floor. Like, we got to stop.
But there have been...
It's
So here's the thing. This is where you got to... Do you believe in McClellan or not? Because we've seen great teams with mediocre defense cobble together a really good defensive system and be the Pittsburgh Penguins won a Stanley Cup with Brian Dumoulin as their number 1
Hey, he's a
defenseman.
UFA.
And honestly might be an option for like the downstream free agency conversations.
It is hard to score goals in the NHL. You cannot manufacture goals in the NHL like you can manufacture a good defensive system.
Just ask Mitch Marner. He has 0 in all game 7s he's played.
Both things are incredibly difficult to do.
He has 3 points.
Oh my God.
Neither is Austin Matthews.
Keep going. Sorry.
I'm just derailing Brad's points by making Mitch Marner jokes.
As we've been doing, which has been quite enjoyable.
Anyways, my point being,
so done with that.
Good thing we only have an hour to go.
So done.
I genuinely forget my point.
This man has 2 kids and he's still struggling right now. I take this as a success.
Like, if you believe in McClellan's system or believe in McClellan as a coach and his ability to create a defensive system, we've seen teams in the past across the NHL have mediocre to average defensive talent utilize a good system to have above average team defense. I have not found many good examples of teams having mediocre to average offense manufacturing above average offense. Both are incredibly difficult to do, but we've seen the one be done before. The Red Wings, for years and years and years now, outside of their power play, have been bottom 5, generously bottom 5 offense in the NHL. And with how talented defensemen like Gavrikov are getting in the NHL, that's almost more to my point of you need to find the forwards who have the talent to beat that. And I'm not saying Sam Bennett is that for sure, but he helps. I'm not saying Nikolai Ehlers is that, but he helps. But like we were talking last episode about how even though he's old, Dodonov would be maybe a good depth forward add for Detroit. He's on Dallas's 4th line right now. Like,
yeah,
you talk about you need to be able to parade out 4 lines of legit offense to be a contending team in the NHL. The Red Wings don't have 2 right now. They've got 5 out of 6 figured out and then 6 problems. I don't think they have the option, if it was a 50-50 between a forward and a defenseman, to pass up on a forward, given that I think in the next 3 years, if they can find one passable left-handed defenseman to play in the top 6, they're good. I still think they're genuinely 3 to 5 good forwards away before we can even talk about them contending. Not all of those 3 to 5 need to be first liners. At least one of them does.
3 to 5 in their respective slots.
Yeah, exactly. And I can make the argument they're one defenseman away. Not a top 4 defenseman is not easy to find. I know that. But if we're just looking at the pure numbers here, I'd rather start solving the forward problem now because you're going to need to continue to chip away at both anyway.
One thing I'll add to your, good defensive system, but strong forwards or good offensive system and strong defense, the teams who make that work, you said it's incredibly rare. You're right. The common denominator is they usually have phenomenal goalies who paper over the issues.
Pittsburgh did it with Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury, so not always.
But remember how hot those goalies got and Tristan Jarry and those guys that's at the right times. Whoever bailed out Marc-Andre Fleury that year. Anyways, the one other defenseman I want to bring up here, and there was a note sent to me that in the Buffalo sphere, people noticed that Bowen Byram, the vibes around him with the Sabres at the end of the season weren't exactly great. There's some conversations about, emptying out an apartment at the end of the season, however much you make of that. I didn't really dive into it too much because I was like, it's the Sabres. This will all come to the surface if it's real. And so it is. Confirmed. I believe Elliot Friedman reported he is on the market and Buffalo is putting some feelers out again on Bowen Byram. Now, if you think back to around Christmas and the holidays and the New Year, the conversations were around Bowen Byram and Dylan Cousins. And we zeroed in, and we think the Red Wings zeroed in on Dylan Cousins, the forward, but Bowen Byram was available. Now, Bowen Byram is an interesting trade candidate still. Not the same player, and I would contend not as much certainty in terms of defensive stability as what Gavrikov would bring, but would bring top 4 talent to the Red Wings. So much younger, 23, turning 24 this summer, left shot defenseman. Hasn't had like a massive breakthrough offensive season yet, but a guy who wants to be, the guy on the power play maybe, or the guy within the top 4. Would he be a worthwhile add, or would that present some risk to the Red Wings roster, especially because you'd have to give up assets to get Bowen Byram, especially in division with Buffalo?
This is one of those ones on the surface is an easy answer. Yes, obviously, yes. A left-handed shot with that level of talent, even if he hasn't realized his full potential.
Needs a contract, but is an RFA for a couple years yet.
That's the thing, is he has 2 complications that really throw a wrench into this. One, it's a trade. You have to give up something to get him. What's that cost? 2, he needs a contract. What's that cost? He's not, he's offensively more talented than Gavrikov, but he's not close to Gavrikov defensively. Is he going to get $8+ million? I don't know, maybe there's a team out there willing to do it. I don't know if I'm there on him yet. But you're trading off the assets you have to give up for he's what, 6 years younger than Gavrikov?
Yeah.
That's a huge advantage. And then again, when you're talking about if you get a Gavrikov or now a Byram, you're making a bet on what your top four is going to look like for a long time. We've talked about it with Seth Jones and how fit is everything. He looked terrible in Chicago, got to Florida, looks like a new man. I struggle to see Byram's fit in the Red Wings top four, because I don't think he's the type of partner you necessarily want to throw with a Mo Seider. If he can play his off wing, yeah, there would be sense of throwing him with Edvinsson. Or the alternative is you reunite Seider and Edvinsson because you have a Byram on your second pair. But then who are you throwing on the right side with him? Because in the long run, it's not Sandin Pellikka. In the short term, Chiarot on his offside? I don't know. So it's, again, I kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth here because I don't think the Red Wings have the option to be picky. If this is the only left-handed defenseman they can get, they kind of have to. It's just he wouldn't be near the top of my list for all those reasons I stated as it stands right now.
I think I kind of primed you there. I pigeonholed you a little bit because we were comparing him to Gavrikov, and that's like that's a 30-year-old who's been there, done that defensively, and you can trust him. You'd trust him pretty much as well as any other defenseman in the league right now to defend. I think I've actually been impressed by how Bowen Byram has defended relative to like what his play style has been purported to be. I think there's a little bit of an opportunity thing here going on, which you do have to be a bit concerned. Is it like a player agent thing where they're like, I want to be the guy and I have to be the guy? Because he's done this now maybe at two different organizations, depending on who's putting this forward at Buffalo. In Colorado, he wanted to be the guy. He saw Makar ahead of him. He was like, okay, well, I got to leave. I'm not going to get the opportunity to grow into the player I want. Now in Buffalo again. But Buffalo has Dahlin. They have power. Like there's players, again, ahead of him who were given more opportunity. You dive into it, Byram's, transition game, playmaking ability, offensive touch is all there. The skating, absolutely. I did like his defending. I did think it was good. And for someone that young, I actually don't have concerns about him being an all-around defenseman. I am still a believer in what Bowen Byram can be as a defenseman to the point where I would be willing to give up the assets to get the much younger player, as Brad noted. 6 years, those aren't just 6 years. Those are 6 prime athletic years. For at least a couple of them, he won't be as good as Gavrikov, in the very least defending. But to me, like I don't have a problem imagining a potential Byram Sandin Pellikka pair at all. Sandin Pellikka is not a defensive slouch, and he's not like a pushover just because he's smaller. Like he gets his nose dirty. Think of the way DeBrincat and Raymond do, but he's a defenseman, so obviously that's a taller task. No pun intended. I think Byram can play with a guy like Sandin Pellikka if he struggles to defend. To me, I would be all over this, even if you did have the luxury of being picky. But as Brad said this episode, as Brad said last episode, as we've been saying for however long now, you don't have the luxury of being picky if you're the Red Wings. If you were adding whatever you want to label the premier holes in this team, top 6 forward, call it top line forward, top 4 defenseman. And Byram would be that for me.
Yeah, the difficulty is just, lining up the right assets to acquire him. And if you're willing to stomach that, I have no idea what's going on in Buffalo anymore. So figuring out what they would want in a trade is, a fool's errand. But that's also an opportunity to get a player for undervalue, because what is Buffalo doing? Nobody knows.
I believe it was a famous philosopher who said chaos is a ladder. Go climb it, Steve. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we're back, more from the world of the NHL and Stanley Cup playoffs. A word from our sponsors first, back after this. What can happen in 3 to 6 months? You could pick up a new hobby and realize it's not for you. You could spend 3 to 6 months debating who to draft at 13th overall and still be split by draft day. Or you could actually do something for yourself and start seeing thicker, fuller hair grow back with Hims. Honestly, that's not a bad trade-off. Hims provides you with convenient access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. It's super easy, no weird in-person appointments or sketchy products from mystery websites. Hims uses legit, doctor-trusted options with ingredients that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You can pick the format that works best for you, chewables, sprays, pills, whatever fits into your routine. And because it's 100% online, the whole thing is low effort. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, so it's not just you figuring this out. Lots of guys are getting ahead of it and feeling better about how they look. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/wingedwheel. That's HIMS.com/wingedwheel for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/wingedwheel. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Welcome back. Very quickly, before we jump into NHL news, the World Championships roll on, and Austria, led by Marco Kasper and company, move on to the quarterfinals for the first time since what, like the 90s?
1994.
Good for them, and great as Marco Kasper continues to lead that team on. What a story he's been for the Red Wings, and now Austria. We talked about it before. Great to see these nations who don't always get the biggest opportunity and aren't like the top tier hockey nations get a chance to compete and succeed at the international level.
Obviously, we hyperfixate on the Red Wings in this tournament because, of course, and all Red Wings fans do the same thing. There's one line that I caught. It was a writer at the Daily Faceoff, Stephen Ellis, who covers a lot of juniors and international stuff. It's kind of his thing with them. He had a line, because he's been doing standout, like this standouts article, like every day he'll post, okay, here's who had a really good day. And Marco Kasper has been on his list almost every single time he's done one of those. And he had a line that I thought was really, really interesting. And I've seen a couple other people talk, not this specifically, but in the same vein. I think Austria is playing Switzerland too, which doesn't.
It's Austria, Switzerland.
Yeah, it doesn't make them favorites, but like that's not the worst quarterfinal matchup they could have got. That's a winnable game, albeit unlikely. Where he said, if Austria can get to the semifinals, like get into the medal games, like Marco Kasper's a legit MVP candidate for this tournament. He's done that much for Austria. The production's been there. The 200-foot game's been there. And again, a team that hasn't been able to get even this far since 1994 is being led by a child. It's
a sentient cannonball.
Yeah, it is remarkable what Kasper has been able to do at this level. And I know it's the World Championships, which is a far cry from the Olympics, which is a far cry from the World Cup of Hockey. But it is still a collection of the top talent in the world. And it's extremely notable what he has done. Like, we look at Lucas Raymond's stats at this tournament, we go, wow, that's great. He could do this in his sleep. We expect that from him.
Do you guys ever watch the show? It's a cartoon. I think it was Mucha Lucha back in the day, and there's Ricochet's pulverizing pinball. It's like a little luchador cartoon. No, just me?
No.
All right, well, then this, for the few listeners out there who don't think I'm a complete dweeb.
You want to go with the luchador comparison, and you're not just going with like Rey Mysterio?
Yeah, but the pulverizing pinball, like he'd spin up and he'd fire off, and that just kind of reminds me of how Marco Kasper plays.
Fair enough.
So the matchups in the quarterfinals: Canada, Denmark, Switzerland, Austria, Sweden, Czechia. Obviously, we're paying attention to Sweden as well, and USA, Finland. Germany out. Mo Seider continuing to get the Detroit Red Wings experience. Lost, heartbreaking loss. Was banged up in that game. I think he strained something. His groin, maybe. I don't know what it was, but he came back and played. Got player of the game, and there's a picture of him holding the trophy, just looking absolutely depressed. I'm like, oh yeah, Mo's continuing his usual. The norm for him.
It's like he never left.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact, do you know what other Red Wing has? I think it's 6 or 7 points in this tournament now.
Erik Gustafsson.
Who
Who looks phenomenal offensively. Like, between Gustafsson and Edvinsson, who would you thought have been the more productive offensive player?
Okay, if we're just talking offense, I would have still guessed Edvinsson, but I would have made
by
consideration by a couple.
Yeah.
But Gustafson's, I know, light years ahead of him right now.
Hey, maybe this inspires the confidence, like a tournament against not always the best competition. Find your game. You have more minutes. You find your opportunity. By God, I'll take it with Erik Gustafsson. Whatever you need. All right, let's jump over to the NHL. You got to start with Leafs and Panthers. We mentioned at the top of the show, the Leafs lose Game 7 in absolutely despicable fashion. Those fans were given, in the most predictable way possible, like Brad said, everyone who has seen anything in the NHL knew it would go this way. They were given hope that they never had the license to have, but it's not their fault it was offered to them, just to get absolutely body slammed again by the Florida Panthers, 6-1 in their own barn. Jerseys being thrown during play, drinks being thrown, boos, Bronx cheers. Like, it was absolutely pathetic. And we watched, I mean, with any sanity being real here, the end of an era in real time in Toronto. And I just wanted to put some quotes out there first, some things that were said post-game. Matthews, the captain, who didn't exactly show up, said we had too many passengers.
Was he wearing a hot dog costume while he said this?
We're all trying to find the guy who did this.
You had this psyop from Marchand and Tkachuk and Paul Maurice out there saying, God, those guys just have it so tough. And if it wasn't for all this pressure, like, I don't know why they have so much pressure on them. And that's why they collapse in. Like, of course, you see how these fans in this market puts the pressure on them. No wonder. They're way closer than you think. And I'm like, you know what? Paul Maurice is probably one of the most pure-hearted people in hockey. I still think those three, that was a coordinated campaign to try to convince Toronto to keep the core together.
Yeah.
No, I think it's both. I think this was absolutely backhanded by Marchand and Tkachuk because that's who they are as people. I think Maurice genuinely felt for them. Oh, like, he just seems like the type of guy who's like, oh, man, we're happy we won, but I feel for those guys.
You ever play, like, Evan, let's say you're playing golf with a buddy. Let's say a buddy who's really high handicap, and let's say you guys bet on a round for the first time, and by the 11th hole, it's like way out of reach for him, and so you say, hey, let's just do double or nothing.
This is oddly specific.
Yeah, I'm just pulling something out of thin air, and you say, let's do double or nothing, and then you trounce him again by the 16th hole, it's over as well. Like, that's what it was like. Like, Florida, they didn't even get a challenge.
That was maybe, everyone always talks about how the Leafs were up 4-1 on Boston. Boston comes back to win that series. That's like shocking, like, as a fan, you're shocked. You can't even, reconcile what happened. But what we saw on Saturday night or Sunday night, whatever it was, like, that's the other end of the spectrum. That's just like pathetic. Like,
it was.
The effort was non-existent. We talk about the give a damn. We talk about being a dog in the playoffs. Like, it was, as a fan, that is way worse, that loss, than losing 4-1 to Boston to me.
I think the coming out of the gate and giving up the first 25 shot attempts of the game was pretty indicative of how that game was going to go.
The advanced analytics say that's bad.
That's bad.
24 is good. 25 is the line.
Speaking of advanced analytics, my favorite tweet, and I got to shout out our friend Pete on this one, Pete Blackburn, noted Bruins fan. Him and Dom, I don't know if it was playful or not, but they were kind of snipping at each other online over the result of this. And Dom went at him about, like, well, you guys set the record for most wins in a season and then blew a 3-1 lead to these same Florida Panthers in the first round. And Tweet just responded, at least people were kind of surprised when we did it.
God, that is such a gut punch. You see the slogan projected next to Craig Berube?
I did. Media? Oh my God.
No grit. What was it? No grit, no grind, no greatness, but not like with
no
commas.
Grit, period.
Yeah.
No grind, period. No greatness, period.
It's just a description of the Leafs.
Like, I feel... Okay. On one hand, I feel like this is absolutely justified to give the Leafs all this shit they're getting. On the other hand, to give them at least a little bit of credit, so it's not a completely one-sided argument, they took the defending champions to Game 7.
Yeah.
They were an overtime goal away from going up 3-0 in this series. Like, they were right there. And even that overtime goal that Marchand scored to make it a 2-1 series instead of 3-0 was a fluke. It was a fluke. They were that close. Like, there is part of me that believes this core is not as fragile and bad as everybody makes them believe, because we see all the moments that they get so close and they're a stupid bounce or an unlucky breakaway from blowing a series open. And then something goes wrong and they completely collapse. And you're like, yeah, that's right. This is who they are. It's fascinating because, again, and I'm not trying to defend him because we talked about him last episode, but Mitch Marner has been the lightning rod again, despite Matthews scoring one lucky goal the whole series. But it's got to be a Leafs thing. 4 Nations tournament, Team Canada goes to overtime twice. Mitch Marner scores and sets up those OT winners. And then he gets to Toronto and we see this. Like, there's certain things in hockey when we talk about, I know. Like, I can sit here and stand on my opinion. I am right and I will fight to the death because I'm right. I have other opinions where it's a guess, but it's an educated guess. I can piece everything together and go, I think I'm right. And then there's other things where I'm like, I don't know, man. And just this Leafs thing happening year after year, I don't know, man.
From the post-season media, Marner was non-committal, gave everyone the impression of he gone. John Tavares and Matthew Knies were both like, we want to be Leafs and we want to stay. And with Knies, like, it would have to be an offer sheet. And for a guy to say, I want to be a Leaf, that number would have to be outrageous to consider getting him to sign. And so you can effectively put that out of your mind, barring, something drastic changing. Although Benjamins do change people's opinions. But with Tavares, it really just depends on what the team wants to bring him back at, like what number and what he would be willing to come back at. If he wants to come back on a very, 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 very sweetheart deal, then any other team who wants Tavares can put that out of their mind. If he's like, I'm not signing for less than 7 on a 3-year deal or whatever it might be, and the Leafs are like, yeah, absolutely not. We need to shake this up when we're not committing $7 million a year to you. Then you might see Tavares shake loose. Because we talk a lot about Marner because he's the guy, but we also talk about what veteran players can you add to stabilize short term, and Tavares could be that. Now, we're not going to get into the whole discussion we got last episode of do you add Marner or Tavares or other Leafs to your team if you're the Red Wings. Continue to debate that in the comments. It's actually been quite interesting to read people's opinions, and there's a lot of really great discussion on both sides of that, but those are things to watch out for. I thought Joseph Woll had the best response to the whole pressure thing. He's like, I don't think anywhere plays without pressure, and I think it's good. It means the fans care. Like, I really hated the whole, the fans are putting too much pressure on us. You know what? Like,
you're a professional athlete.
Like,
you make millions of dollars playing a sport. There's pressure everywhere when you're a professional athlete. Like,
go to a smaller market, enjoy the Mammoth logo on your jersey, and you can go grocery shopping probably anonymously. But it's what you get playing in Toronto.
It's loser thinking. Obviously the Leafs and the Canadians are the center of the hockey universe when it comes to attention, pressure, size of fan base, however you want to classify it. That puts them at what? The equivalent of the 19th biggest NFL team? Imagine being LeBron James and the attention he gets, or Dak Prescott, or Aaron Judge, and these guys are able to go out and do
one
it.
of those is not like the other, but go on.
No, but like you can argue about Dak all you want, but he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Was it 2 or 3 years ago he was runner-up for MVP? He can perform under that pressure. It's the rest of the team that lets him down usually. Like, he's not Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, but I'm just making the point, like, he's a legit star in the league, in the biggest market in the league, and it doesn't seem to faze him. Why is it that hockey players who have this reputation for being the most team first, tough, self-sacrificing athletes on the planet, oh my God, the media, like, they're so sensitive. In our Patreon, we were making fun of them because what is it, on the NHL Edge stats? Like, if you're in the bottom half for any stat, they only put bottom 50%. They won't tell you if you're, because God forbid we hurt their feelings or make them uncomfortable. Like, the word loser attitude or loser thinking gets thrown around a lot and means almost nothing these days. This is that. You cannot like the attention. I'm not sitting here and saying you have to enjoy having 25 cameras thrown in your face after every game.
Ryan O'Reilly didn't, and he left.
It comes with the territory, though. Like, you're a pro athlete, you get paid accordingly for these things.
Exactly. Like, you have to at least be able to handle it. You don't need to enjoy it. You need to be able to handle it. If an NHL defenseman can go out there and get run on 37 dump-ins a night, and I guarantee every time a defenseman goes to retrieve one of it, and you two are defensemen, you can tell me you don't enjoy that moment of the game.
The worst thing ever was getting a cross-ice dump-in.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm getting smoked.
Sweet.
But you do it. Okay, that probably seems far worse than having a camera thrown in your face. Like, I refuse to accept this as an excuse at all. There's a million things where I can point at any Leaf and go, yeah, that sucks. That's hard to overcome. Yep, that sucks. Yep, that's weird. This isn't one of them. Handle it.
I had two favorite moments of the game. Well, actually I had many, but I'll try and limit it.
6.
First one was when they panned to Mitch Marner and he's telling everyone on the bench to wake the F up, and his hair couldn't be any drier. It was very much like, there's too many passengers. We can't find the guy who did this.
Yeah.
And the next was the ass block.
Oh, juicy.
Yeah.
Catherine, I saw that and I am on my phone, like, just like crying, laughing. And she's like, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm like, you need to watch this video. She's like, why is his back so arched?
It's not just that it hit him in the ass. Like, the way he was on his hands and knees.
Have you ever tried this one before?
She's like, and then she'd hear me in the other room just laughing. She's like, are you watching the ass block again? I'm like, no.
It's like
he's got it projected,
now.
blown up on the 80
Oh God, it was so funny. And like the replies that people had to that GIF and whatnot, I was just beside myself laughing.
It's like the still image of Tark Skubal on the mound where he was on all fours with his ass up. Whereas like he didn't need to be all caked up like that. Like, it was absolutely unnecessary.
It was so funny.
Oh, we should just jump scare Evan. Now that we have the TV in the studio, I should just play the ass block GIF while Evan's talking to try to get him to break character. Oh, that's so funny, man.
We're going so easy on the Leafs right now. It's insane.
Well, I mean, yeah.
What else is there to say, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, wow. The first one of the year, and it's about how bad the Leafs are. That's an indictment enough. The conversation is going to continue to be on the Leafs as we see what their free agents do. In the
a guy I work with, he's like, I'm not watching until they make it out of the second round. And then he turned on the game.
It's his fault.
And he turned it on and he's like, this is why I don't watch this.
John Smith from NASA, you cursed that team.
Yes.
Brad Marchand, you gave some interesting stats earlier, Evan. How about this one? Brad Marchand is the first player in NHL history to beat the same team 5 times in Game 7s.
He's the mayor of Toronto.
The line about him where he threw out there that he grew up a Leafs fan, that's the biggest troll he's ever thrown out there.
God, man.
He was talking about how they believed in themselves and stuff. It's just like, this guy's an assassin.
We talked about it a while ago.
Clinical.
Where I people were all over me because they couldn't believe when I said, like, I genuinely love Brad Marchand. Like, he's one of my favorite players outside of Detroit. This is why. This is absolutely one. He's a great hockey player, super fun to watch. But 2, there has never been an NHL player who has leaned into the heel role as passionately and emphatically as Brad Marchand does. And
changed the game.
I have such a deep respect for it. But then the crazy part is you see quotes from anybody who's ever played with him. They say he is the happiest, most optimistic, best teammate to be around. all the quotes coming out about Marchand the last few days, I have never been more convinced I want Detroit to throw whatever they have to at him to get him on this team.
And he's a guy who shows up when it matters. You talk about playoff performers. Someone sent me a Reddit post. For the 8th consecutive season, 8 times in a row, Brad Marchand has gotten at least 10 points in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's the first player to achieve this feat since Wayne Gretzky.
Didn't he have a quote as well? They were asking about big games. He's like, "Oh, this wasn't like this Game 7 wasn't a big game once you've won the Stanley Cup."
And that's both him twisting the knife and it's honest.
Yeah,
he's just a dog. And you love to hate when he plays the Red Wings. You're like, God, I hate him more than the Brad sitting right there. But man, does that guy perform?
It's funny because Crystal, my wife, still hates him. But you know what's...
the Marchand, yeah, go on.
But you know what's funny is the more time goes on, Brad Marchand has now turned into Mika's favorite player outside of Detroit. And like,
Mika's got that dog in her.
I'm like, okay, just watch him play like him. Not that I'm saying that's going to make you any better or worse as a player. Just me as a dad in the stands, I would be the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
All right, conference finals. We saw the first game last night, Florida-Carolina, where Florida played their game and made it look easy against Carolina. Man, until someone shows otherwise, you have a hard time seeing Florida, who I don't want to say they're getting better as the playoffs go on because they made quick work of Tampa Bay, but they don't seem to be slowing down. One game now into the Eastern Conference Final. They got to be the favorites, and that game, they're just pulling everyone into their mud pit, and they're beating the piss out of them.
Objectively, the funniest result of this playoffs would be Florida making quick work of Carolina, 4 or 5 games, getting to the Cup Finals, winning again, call it in 5 or 6 games, and the Leafs fans going, we were the only team who took them to 7, and management seeing that, and they run it back again.
You can only hope. Predictions on both conference finals, now biased because we know Florida's up a game.
I genuinely think Florida's going to outclass Carolina, so I'll go Florida in 5. Out west, I think that is a straight coin flip. So I'm just going to go with the Cup final I want to see, and I'm going to say Edmonton in 7. Because
a rematch.
I want a rematch. That would be a fantastic series.
I have a rematch as well. I'll say for the sake of it, Florida in 6 and Edmonton in 7, which are the two most probably commonly picked answers at this point. But you said team of destiny about Edmonton, and if Skinner continues to be confident in the 3rd round, then I think that's enough for them. But coin flip is probably apt, and yeah, Florida is just Florida, so I think rematch as well.
Carolina continues to not scare me out of the Metro. I love what Florida does. Every series, they make adjustments. They target key players that they have to neutralize. And apparently Seth Jones has turned into a Norris caliber defenseman in Florida. So I'll take Florida. I'll say 6, but I think that's very generous. On the other side, I agree. Coin flip is kind of how the Dallas-Edmonton series feels. This is certainly going to be Edmonton's most difficult test and the team that has the most depth. And they got Mikko Rantanen, who can just decide to get hat tricks when he wants as well. I'll say Dallas in 7, but I really think it could go either way.
Did you know last night was the Carolina Hurricanes' 13th consecutive Eastern Conference Final loss?
Oh, no.
Wow.
It is, and it's not even 3 series ago they won a couple games and then lost 4 straight. They have been swept 3 straight times in the conference finals.
Oh, man.
That's shocking because you have to do something right to get there. So you think you'd at least get a win or 2 just out of the fact that you are a good team.
The one thing I will say that's a praise of Carolina and also an indictment on Carolina is I think we have underestimated, since Pittsburgh and Washington have fallen from their prime, just how truly weak that division is.
Yeah.
It's Again, nobody believed in Washington this year, despite how good their record was. And Washington fans were all over everybody being like, how can you not believe in us? And Carolina dispatched of them easily, like just straight up outclassed them. And now Florida looks like they're going to outclass Carolina. It's like, well, we were right.
It's one game, but yeah.
And
New Jersey makes the playoffs with missing
Jack
the best
Hughes.
players
Yeah.
at every position.
Yeah, Carolina had the easiest path of the 4 teams to get to the conference final by a lot. Now, I will give Carolina credit. They outclassed both teams they played. It's not like they had some tight series against weak teams and they just got here by fluke. They beat the brakes off both those teams. But now it's, again, there's always time to turn it around. But man, that first game was a tough watch.
Some teams are just professional winners. Like Florida is a professional winning team. Like they match up against other teams. They know what they have to do and they play super structured hockey. So it becomes extremely difficult when they make adjustments and they're not like, we're only playing this way.
Yeah.
Florida's like, this is what they're giving us. This is how we neutralize them. And then we're going to go do our thing. And they do that time and time again.
They're a machine. All right. Some quick NHL news. It was already, I thought he already said this, but it came up again. Alexander Ovechkin confirms he's playing next season. So just because he's done the goal chase and, crushing buckets of beers.
You saw that picture?
Oh, yeah.
Tough day to be a Stella. Oh, my God.
Tough day to be the servers carrying the buckets of them back and forth.
Well, the best part about that picture was Ovi was sitting next to the bucket of 8 or 9 empty Stellas, and Connor McMichael next to him looked like he was not holding up well. Meanwhile, Ovi, like, you could tell by the still image, he hasn't felt one of those yet.
He's got another few buckets in him yet before he gets to go to the washroom for the first time. And the Boston Bruins, for all of the displeasure in the fan base with Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, Sweeney extended 2 years as GM.
God, do I love it when division rivals continue to make mistakes.
I think Sweeney's a complicated GM. I honestly do. I think a lot of Boston's downfall was just, you got to pay the piper eventually.
Time and age, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's made some good moves, and he's made some moves where I was like, you have a lot of really good players who are going to paper over the fact that was a terrible move.
Yep. Oh, 1,000%. Elias Lindholm, I don't think it gets talked about enough as a potential worst contract in the NHL. I was ready to rip on the Zadorov contract, but when we watched him live, and I actually thought he was terrific.
I still want him on Detroit.
Yeah, he was terrific, so I'll give him a pass for that one. But overall, like, up until this trade deadline, it didn't seem like they had a plan. And now it's too late. They're going to be bad for a while. And are they going to full send the rebuild, or are they going to try and half-ass it? To be seen. But between them extending Sweeney and Sabres somehow keeping Kevin Adams around, hey, if you want Detroit to stay ahead of the bottom half of this division, it's a good start.
All right. Let's jump into the world of prospects here before we get into overtime. Lynden, Lakovic from the Moose Jaw Warriors, WHL, a very popular name that comes up whenever we ask the listeners, who do you think the Red Wings should draft if it's going to be, not a big name following. And Lakovic is a divisive player in terms of whether or not he would be worth it there. Who is he as a player? Late birthday, December 12th, worthwhile for the Red Wings to pick up? Or is this a guy where the concerns outweigh the benefits in your mind at that draft position?
All right. 6'4", 6'5" forward out of the WHL who can fly. He can really skate. Wicked shot. Not the greatest hockey IQ in the world, but won't call it a net negative either. Has a nose for the net. Everything about the skill set is very, very intriguing. Great hands, great shot, and can skate extremely well at that size. I mean, how is that not intriguing? Like, if you could build a toolkit in a lab, this is probably where you start. I don't think the hockey IQ is special. I question if it's good. I think at the NHL level, it's below average. Above average for junior, below average for NHL. There's the whatever the hell that suspension was last year.
Yeah, why don't I describe it here?
Yeah.
His rookie season, he was suspended indefinitely, and I'm borrowing this from Scott Wheeler, I believe. So credit to Scott from The Athletic. He was suspended indefinitely. That was eventually lifted after 17 games, along with 3 other Moose Jaw Warriors teammates for an, quote, off-ice incident while on a team road trip in Edmonton. Edmonton police investigated and said that it wasn't criminal in nature, but the players were found to have violated the WHL's standard of conduct policy, and the Warriors were fined $25,000 for the incident. So it wasn't nothing.
Yeah, it was
details. But
if it was something. So if you're a believer that Steve Yzerman drafts on character, that should almost immediately disqualify him. You would think,
pending what the conversations
are. Here's the thing, though. This is the exact type of prospect that scares the living hell out of me.
Because he's much bigger than you.
Because he's huge, so he could just be physically dominating guys in junior. He's a late birthday, so this is, again, his 3rd trip through the WHL, and his production isn't good for a first-round prospect for his age and his size in junior. He's, 10 points over a point per game? It's good, but it's not special. Again, I'll relate it back to Reshny. Reshny outscored him by almost 40 points. Now, mind you, Lakovic missed some time for an injury, so the games played's not equal. But an 18-year-old, 6'4", 6'5" forward with okay production and concerns about hockey IQ, I'm not saying this is do not draft for me, but he's probably not creeping into my top 20. Not a one-to-one skill set comparison, but I've got Michael Rasmussen lights flashing all over this one. So I am not a fan at 13, I will say.
I also thought about the Michael Rasmussen thing, and I think the differentiators for me are he doesn't only stand out in terms of using his body to excel. And he does. He protects the puck well. He uses his body a lot in different games to really kind of dominate his opponents in certain plays. And that's an advantage, but you also, like Brad always says, you have to put an asterisk on that, because is that going to translate to the NHL where everyone's big and strong and even little guys are strong? You just don't know. And we saw what happened with Michael Rasmussen when he came into the league. But he also has the shot. He has, I think, the puck skills enough where I think there is more of a dynamic element to his game. I think he's a mid-first rounder, all in all, but to me, I agree with you in the sense that he's not one of my favorite picks there. It's not the end of the world if they take him, but it's risky. You've seen this fail before. Is it unfair? Maybe, but I kind of want to see more out of a guy who's that big in terms of production, like Brad said, for me to get over the fact that it's, late birthday and bigger than his peers right now, and how's that going to translate? And it doesn't mean if he doesn't check all those boxes now, he'll never be a guy who excels at the NHL level, but it makes it less likely in my mind in terms of projectability.
I think I fall more on your side, Ryan, than Brad's in terms of where I am with him. I think he doesn't use his size the way he should. So it's not like he's out there just blowing guys up that are younger than him or smaller than him. He's got a good shot. He's got good playmaking ability. Moose Jaw was not good this year too, so that I think is an important factor. So yeah, we're having the same conversation again, where it's there's lots of interesting guys at 13. I'm not sure he's the guy for me there, but I could understand and see why the Red Wings might be interested in him at 13. So if they take him, I'd say I probably have more question marks than some of the other guys we've talked about, but I could understand why they see a potential NHL player there, because he does have some good skills.
There's a wide range of outcomes for him because the tools are so intriguing. When I was watching him, there's one, I don't like player comparisons, especially at this age, because there's so much that can differentiate. There's one player that kept jumping into my mind when I was watching him. I'm going to throw it out there. Some people are going to go, oh, that'd be pretty good for 13th overall. And some people are going to flinch. This guy gives me huge Anthony Mantha vibes. The goal scoring, you see it. The talent, you see it. The size is similar. Doesn't use it. And again, Rasmussen doesn't really either. he doesn't like Rasmussen was a power play net front specialist in junior, and he did dominate because of his physicality. And Lakovic doesn't rely solely on that. I would argue the opposite. He doesn't use it enough. Evan's right on that one. But he does use his reach and his leverage pretty well. I think his range of outcomes is Michael Rasmussen to Anthony Mantha, and everywhere in between is possibility. Now, if you get Anthony Mantha in his best year, that's great for 13th overall.
Phenomenal.
But are you going to get that every year? Like,
he's a better skater than Mantha. He doesn't have that short, choppy stride that Mantha did, but he has a rangy stride. He has that sort of, big guy, doesn't look like he's moving all that fast, but he is vibe to him.
Yeah, Mantha won a lot of races when he actually got going. He could move. He just chose not to all the time.
Slow acceleration, and he just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Oh, he's from the Q, man.
I knew this was coming.
He's from the Q. Like, you don't have to skate that fast. You just have to put a shot on net, and it's probably going in.
You know that guy's a stick on the golf course, right? He's an absolute dart.
It's all part of the mental warfare when you play someone in a match.
Yeah. I've heard that some of the Red Wings brass of the past, they wouldn't even play with anyone if they were like above a 12 or 13 handicap, and they loved.
That was Ken Holland. He literally wouldn't let guys go on their golf trip if their handicap was too high.
And he loved playing with Mantha because
dude, you're not looking for his ball every shot.
Yeah, probably also took a lot of money off him in net games.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyhow, the Mantha comparison is apt, and in a couple ways, like Mantha at his best is his peak. That's excellent. But also, you remember Anthony Mantha, his whole issue is he was almost never Anthony Mantha at his peak. Like, very rarely. When we talk about range of outcomes of guys, Anthony Mantha is such a good example of how you can have all the talent in the world and just achieve like 90% of it so little. He was such a frustrating Red Wing. Even outside of the choosing not to skate back when the rush is going the other way, he just would like it.
What is he, a Toronto Maple Leaf?
Designed to be, pretty much. And how often were the goal scoring abilities that we talked about with Mantha actually showing up? Maybe like 3/4 of a season.
Yeah.
Anyways, not to pigeonhole Lynden into this bucket, but you have those kind of thoughts of can he put it together at that level? So I think he's a perfectly reasonable mid-round pick in the first round. But like Brad, maybe to a lesser degree, I just don't think he's in my favorites bucket right now. That's Lynden Lakovic. We're going to continue the prospect profiles and probably double up on them as we get closer to the draft. First, another quick break, and when we're back, the final segment here on the Winged Wheel Podcast. Back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the giveaways, the Discord, Thoughts with Evan, all of that and lots more. Again, you allow us to do everything that we do on the show, and we are forever grateful to our patrons. All right, questions from our patrons. Jeremy Dahl says, so after all the trash talk Dangle talked about the Yzer plan, is them having to put up with the Shanna plan just sweet, sweet karma? Also, can you comment on the fact that Vancouver may not have a practice rink? Thanks, boys. Now to be nervous for the offseason. Yeah, I am not going to make the mistake of reveling in Leafs failure by making a comparison to what Detroit has done, because until Detroit wins anything in this era, those are going to be two distinct things for me. Speaking of Brendan Shanahan, though, you have to imagine that he's gone from that organization.
Yep. And I have slight concern where he might end up.
No, I from everything I heard, he is also like a big personality. I don't see that gelling with Yzerman in that. Like, unless he really wants to take a step back, I don't know that has a fit in Detroit.
I mean,
and Brendan Shanahan is my favorite player of all time.
I say, if there's one thing Detroit's good at, it's getting the band back together. You look at who's in that organization right now: Lidstrom, Cronwall, Yzerman, Draper, Maltby.
And you know what? Actually, what would be the sweetest justice if Shanahan comes here and Detroit immediately takes a big step forward and then moves on to like a cup?
Maybe NHL executives need a new situation as well. Just like players, when they get out of Buffalo, they turn into the superstar everyone knew they were. Maybe that's the same thing that has to happen here.
Maybe that'll happen to Kevin Adams. Can you imagine that?
He wins GM of the year.
Oh, that's so funny. Why does Vancouver not have a practice rink? Because they're an unserious franchise.
You know how much it would cost to put a practice rink in Vancouver?
Oh, billions.
Billions.
Yeah, that you want to know the worst real estate in North America. Vancouver may as well be there, I think.
Be cheaper to buy a cargo ship, build the rink on that, and ferry out players and staff.
They could fly to Utah and use one of their 100 ice pads that they're putting in that state.
Yes.
And fly back every day for less than that. And pay for the sleep therapist who would have a lot of work to do. Wings in the Wild says, any chance Marner goes for a shorter term deal to shake the head case stigma, something like a 2x12? Also, love the new studio, but then talks about the camera angles and how much of Brad's lower body we're seeing. We're working on that. We're just waiting for the studio to be finished. It is a work in progress. Then we'll get all the angles dialed in. But hey, you're getting a lot of premium content for free here, folks. People usually have to pay for this.
I don't know. I've been wearing pants the whole time, so
yeah. I think this complaint was about the socks below the ankles. So we can't let the dogs out for free, though.
Yeah. Well, if you want me to take the socks off,
no,
just ask
that's
nicely,
okay.
Please.
That's okay. No, Marner's not signing for anything other than the max 7-year deal or 8 if he unlikely stays in Toronto or has his rights traded. And someone else also asked about what are the chances that they trade his rights. Matt asks, what are the odds that a team makes a trade and sign to deal to get Marner and get that 8th year? And what would you offer Toronto to be able to do it? Personally, I'm not offering much. I mean, it would have to come with the certainty that he's going to do the signing. So I guess if they allow him to speak to other teams early and then you have a certainty, then you give up a bit. But other than that, if you know Marner wants to sign with you.
Well, what's that 8th year worth? Second to third, probably somewhere in there?
Sure. Is it likely? Those two parties don't exactly seem like they're cooperating, to say the least. MBC in Initialism says, how likely is it that the Wings whiff on a top-line wing, move Kasper back up and bring in Danielson as a 2 or 3C and MBN in the top 6 or the top 9 and can Cop function as a 2C between DeBrincat and Kane? The last question, I mean, yes, under McClellan, it was working.
Ish. It was an improvement on everything before that, but if you're going by league average standards, it wasn't there.
I don't know. I was happy with it. I think if you kept it going, it would have been perfectly fine league average wise. It would have been I'm not talking, you wouldn't have been 90th percentile, but you would have been comfortably 50th. But what you just described, there's a good shot.
Well, eventually it's going to be something like that. I just hope it's not by Christmas.
But it is likely that they won't land a top winger in free agency because there's only so many to go around and so many teams in the top 6 forwards, right? So that's the only reason why I think there's a good shot. Rasmussen and Petrie on a 2-0 breakaway says, for no reason whatsoever, I'm thinking about the All-Star game a couple of years ago when Larkin and Marner had a little bromance going. How many times have we seen this? Larkin comes back from the All-Star game or Four Nations. Raymond comes back from the All-Star game or whatever it is. These guys play with, all-world players and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. That's the kind of thing where it's yeah, absolutely. Everyone who's saying Marner or this other player, they are not going to solve Detroit's size or grit or playoff performer issue, although the third one's not even an issue. Detroit hasn't even gotten there. But you bring in good players, they beget good players, and they make your good players better. You're not just adding a Marner, you're not just adding a whoever, you're adding points onto the players that you have. If you want to think about it like a video game, it enhances everything. It's like when Evan shows up, when it's just Brad and I on the episode, it sucks.
That's right.
I'm just trying to butter you up so you give me more strokes in our next match. Joseph Barry says, in your opinion, what are the top 5 biggest markets in the NHL, and do you think Detroit is a top 5 market? Detroit is a top 5 market when they're winning. Original 6, the fandom is crazy engaged, but when they're not winning, no. You're talking New York, Rangers, LA, Boston,
Toronto, Montreal,
Chicago, Toronto, Montreal. Those are all contenders in there. Vancouver, Detroit's in there. They're not far off, but when they're losing, the market wouldn't generate as much revenue just by virtue of not.
If the Red Wings were not an original 6 team, would you feel the same way?
No, but they are.
But market, when Forbes releases their market valuations, Detroit's always hovering around 10th?
Yeah, 6 to 10. Yeah, thereabouts. Certain organizations are going to be like more valuable just by virtue of where they are. New York, LA, like it doesn't matter if those teams suck. They're always going to have the massive valuations. They have the population and the wealth in their metro areas. It's just not the same in Detroit as it is in LA. It's not controversial. That's just the truth. But like in terms of hockey market, Buffalo is the biggest, most consistent hockey viewing market in the NHL, bar none. They don't have LA's population or wealth, but whenever you look at, where the viewers are coming in from for the Stanley Cup Finals, Buffalo's always like top 3, and they're certainly not in the Cup Final. So it depends on how you categorize it. Also, if the Red Wings signed Marner, would you care that they're not big and they wouldn't solve the size issue in their top 6?
I genuinely don't believe that's an issue because, one, Patrick Kane's not going to be around forever. But also, when Tampa was winning their cups, they were not a big forward group. They had a gigantic defense group, but between Hagel, Point, Kucherov, like, they weren't big. And even Stamkos, like, he was tall, but he wasn't heavy and didn't play a physical style. Like, you can absolutely have small forwards if, one, and most importantly, they're good, and two, they play with that edge to them. Like Lucas Raymond has that. We don't. When was the last time there was any concern about Lucas Raymond being sub 6 foot?
No, you're right. But I do also think that the Red Wings, I disagree in that you think it's not an issue, but I agree in that is not for, if you have an opportunity to sign someone who's going to be a 100-point player potentially or a top 6 contributor, that you don't do it because you're like, oh, we are missing size and grit elsewhere, and so we're not going to sign this guy who's just not big. If you have an opportunity to sign Brad Marchand on a short-term deal that's reasonable in terms of AAV, are you going to not do it because you're worried about size? No. And he has a sandpaper. So I'm not concerned, but I do think that is an issue for the Red Wings. But I also think like they have a big guy who doesn't play big in Rasmussen. So it's not, to Brad's point, it's not all about size. It's how you're playing with your size. Like, who's a more physical player, Rasmussen or Raymond?
Raymond.
It's at the very least, it's close,
Which is hilarious because, and Rasmussen, even when he does play physically, he's not even good at it. Like, he loses so many puck battles.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean there. I do think he can be good at it, but he doesn't do it enough, and the puck battles still. It is better than it was in the past, I'll say. All right, Jack's dad says, if you could replace any of our bottom 6 with MBN, Danielson, Mazur, and Lombardi, and our bottom 3D with ASP, Buyam, and Tuomisto for the whole season, knowing that we weren't going to make the playoffs anyways, would you do it? And how much of a difference do you think the outcome would be? Would it kind of get them into the playoffs?
No, it wouldn't affect that much. Probably with that many rookies would hurt the team more than it would help them. And I think a lot of those guys need a season in the A to build their confidence to dominate. Like, we saw, again, Rasmussen, we're picking on him a lot, but he got rushed to the NHL and we saw how that stunted his development. So you don't want to do that with MBN or ASP if they're not there yet. Obviously, we know Danielson and Mazur are super close, so that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Tuomisto, he's not exactly been crushing it in Grand Rapids, so I don't know why people would think he's going to even be capable in the NHL at this point. One more year, maybe things turn around, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't do it.
All right, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to the sponsors of the show, and thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe. It really does help. Leave a rating, a review, or the thumbs up, or the stars, or tell a friend about the show. All of that does help quite a bit. Again, to our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Jennifer Morris, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Carl, Brutanen Naluski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassam, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Plydmore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Matt Keeler, Michael Edlin, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Paji713, R.A., Richard Perkins, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Sam Bankson, Sharks owe us a second overall pick, changed my mind, Slim Smitty Card, Stephen Ortlieb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Tiger McDougal, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Wings Fan in Chicago, Iser Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohannon, The Cheesebag Army, A.A. Ron, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Busting It Down Like Evan on a Tuesday Night, C.E. Hayes, Chris Felinsky, Clay Adams, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheeseback Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans, Brown, Pomeranian, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Hockey Fan, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitmond, Matt Keeler, Mitch Minier, Neutron Star Softener, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Ryan M, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, our good friend Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott. Yep, it's made with bits of real Panthers, so you know it's good. And your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Talk to you this weekend.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at WingedWheelPod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.